Hey guys, we just wrapped up our second episode 2 of the 435 podcast. We're doing the housing market update. I got Branden, I got Jeff. We're giving you an update on what we're doing with Rock the Vote. And we hope you enjoy this episode and all the episodes to come. All the mayors, city council members get to know our local politics and what's going on and get ready for the election. I'm glad you're tuning in. Jump in the comments. We're going to be in the comments. The whole purpose of this is to start dialogue and discourse. So if this episode was boring and it wasn't awesome, tune into the next one. It'll be much better. If this was awesome, give us a thumbs up, follow us, subscribe. We'll see you out there. Real Estate 435.
Dude, I dig the hat. I really do. I think it looks really good.
It's a po' boy hat.
And we're rolling. So
it's my flat hat.
Yeah.
It's a Friday hat.
It's a Friday hat?
Mm-hmm. Rob's the only person with that kind of hat that I look at and I go, he's got it. 100% rocks it.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, man.
Could not do it.
I think you could
Branden
do it.
couldn't do it.
I'd get beat up if I wore something like that.
I'd beat you up.
Somebody should beat me up, probably.
All right. Well,
very true.
Let me know when. We'll arrange it.
So
this is the first podcast we're doing.
This is episode 2, brought to you by Ghost. Not actually sponsored by Ghost yet.
The drink,
unless they want to.
Not the band,
which
is an excellent band. By
they
the way.
maybe they could sponsor us.
I don't even know they exist.
Ghost, Mallory.
Ghost, yeah, it's a good band.
Getting tested.
Mallory, look it up.
Just kidding.
Ghost. I know Ghost.
Ghost.
There you go. Mallory knows it.
So this is episode 2. The first episode we did was on Zoom. Brought to you by Cup Bop. Also still delicious. Cup Bop.
That's right. But we're greatly improved since episode 1.
Off Green Springs. Mm-hmm. In the Albertsons parking lot. Cup Bop. It's delicious.
Mm-hmm. It is good, but if you order it spicy, they mean spicy.
Yep.
Ooh. Red Fort. Was that who's been the spiciest lately? Because you're the spicy guy. Are you a spicy guy too?
Oh,
you're like,
yeah.
I want to know who's going to have the most.
More than me. Branden's more than me.
Yeah.
Red Fort wasn't too spicy.
You're going to have to commit to the mic, dude.
You asked him like extra spicy.
No, I said spicy.
Just start kissing the mic, dude. You just got to make love to it.
If you tell Red Fort extra spicy,
that's better.
I've learned there's 2 places you do not mess with spice levels, and that is Indian places and Thai places.
Yeah. Bombay Cafe got it pretty good too.
Bombay Cafe.
I said, hey, give me the spiciest you can get it. And that was.
You were hiccuping from the Royal Thai right here in Santa Clara.
That was hot too.
Yeah.
This episode's brought to you by Royal Thai. Mm-hmm. Big shout out to Royal Thai. They make a delicious lunch. Their specials. Check them out. They're all over town too.
Delicious. There's 2 of them.
No, I think there's the Royal Thai off
Brigham
Telegraph. It's still over there.
Yeah.
And then there's the Express off in Desert Hills, right?
Yeah.
And then the one in Santa Clara. Mm-hmm. Delicious.
The one over by like Home Depot? That's not a Royal Thai. It's a Thai place and it is good. Really good.
The one by Sonic. It's like behind Sonic.
Oh, that's on Telegraph.
On Telegraph?
Yeah, that's Royal Thai.
That's Royal Thai. Mm-hmm. So Home Depot, what are you talking about?
There's a Thai place over by Home Depot on Sunset.
On Sunset. That's the Thai kitchen.
Yeah.
It's also delicious.
Yeah, really good.
So good. So we got Thai places all over town. That's enough for our sponsors. I think that's it.
Yeah.
We should be covered. I think that'll pay for all of the fees.
I don't think you're allowed to call them sponsors if they're not really sponsors.
But maybe
they're sponsor candidates.
Sponsor candidates.
Yeah, potential sponsors.
Okay, I'm curious to know if Branden can give us the summary of our voter project. Branden, do you think you could give us a summary of the voter information project that we're working on? This is episode 1 of the series for the project too. So,
yeah. So you could just stop me if I get too far off track here.
Oh no, I'm gonna let you go.
You're gonna just let me go, huh? So historically, there's really low voter turnout in local elections, right? So if there's not the big national election to go with it, people don't pay attention to it. They don't think about it. There's not big debates on TV for them to watch on, Fox or CNBC or CNN or whatever.
Before you keep going, how would you rank how caught up you are on politics in general? And then, okay, first is local politics. How caught up are you? Could you tell me who the mayor of St. George is?
I can tell you who the mayor of St. George is.
Could you tell me the mayor of Ivins?
No.
Santa Clara?
No.
Washington?
Yes.
Hurricane?
Yes.
Nice. That's pretty good.
I could probably tell you who most of the city council is in St. George. I could tell you most of the city council in Washington.
Like who they are, but what about their platform? Like
Yeah,
what they kind of.
not in St. George. In Washington, a little bit more so.
Yeah. When I moved here, just and then we'll get back onto the summary. When I moved here, my assumption was I was like, how did people run for local office if it's like just this super right, all in a big group? Like who is a dissenting vote? Like how many is there like dissenting votes on this? And as you dive deeper into it, even within certain ideologies, right? We're a big spectrum of belief systems, all meshed into one, even in Little St. George. So I think the assumption that I made when I first moved here was way off as I got deeper into it. So like, topics wise, that's the hard one to really dive into. But keep going. So you're not really plugged in. You're semi plugged in.
I would say I'm like your average person plugged in local politics. Okay. Started paying attention to it a little bit more during the pandemic, and then got a lot of what I know of people is I learned through the pandemic and paying more attention. Mm-hmm. And after the pandemic kind of ended and everything went back to normal, I got back into the swing of my business and my life and haven't paid as much attention. Yeah. So kind of out of tune, out of touch with it. But I'm also learning that there's a lot of really important stuff, right, in local elections. So, the whole idea of this is to help people get easy access to the information that they need to be an informed voter in a meaningful way that's easy to access, hopefully exciting and, entertaining for them to, become a informed voter and help drive additional turnout to the polls.
Yeah, sweet, man.
Pretty good summary.
That's a pretty good summary.
Yeah.
What would you add to it, Jeff? What else are we doing? So we're trying to drive traffic to, voter information, voter registration. We had the podcast. This is kind of episode 1 in the new digs. Shout out to blueformmedia. But what else would you add to what is it we're trying to do?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is historically younger people don't.
Sorry,
how's that? I should probably lower it. Let me just get it right up in my face.
Get it right up in there, man.
I think historically in Washington County, younger people just don't vote. And so their voice really isn't heard. I mean, it goes back to the old adage, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so, 18 to 35-year-olds, there just isn't a huge voter turnout. And so, the people that are voting are the ones that are making their voice heard and getting the stuff done or at least going out to vote for the people that they think are going to vote for what they're going to do. And so, younger people just don't go out and vote. And so, part of the Rock the Vote campaign, Get Out and Vote campaign is kind of geared towards younger people and what we see, from a bunch of different topics, housing, water, what that's going to look like in 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Well, going back to why 18 to it's like really 18 to like 35.
Right.
It's the biggest demographic that gets kind of missed. But even more focus is be 18 to 25, right?
For sure.
It's just that second stage where you're in college. You actually might not even be residing in the city you ultimately plan on being at, right? Because so many people are going to college or they go away.
Yeah, come here from out of state.
They go on a mission. There's so many, especially in the local population, we have a bunch of these moving dynamics. So if I'm going to college at Utah Tech, why do I care about St. George city elections, right? So the demographic that's actually living and operating in St. George, I think there's a big portion that's the Utah Tech, but what about the ones that are not? Why is it important for 18 to 25 to be paying attention? Like from your perspective, why should they be paying attention?
Yeah, a few different reasons. But I think one of the most important is wages. Is the length of time that if you're 24, 25 years old, you might love St. George and might not want to go anywhere. You might want to stay here for the rest of your life. And local politics can affect the trajectory of what that looks like. And if you can't afford to live here when you're 24, 25, you just graduated college, you want to stay, you might have to move. So, and, we want to be able to at least, from a housing, that's a pretty big topic. Provide the opportunity for, younger people to stay here and live here.
Yeah. What do you think? Why should they pay attention? Because the 21-year-old me, I was a political science major, and I didn't know anything about the local city that I didn't know what was going on.
Didn't care either.
I didn't even care.
Yeah.
Fullerton,
Yeah.
Irvine. I was going to a university. I was living in Tustin, working in Irvine, and then going to school in Fullerton, in a massive metropolitan, millions and millions of people. So local politics was the last thing I was thinking about.
Wouldn't your voice matter?
Right. And then I was learning. I was trying to just get downloaded and educated on what's going on. So I don't necessarily think the 18 to 25 should have to be paying attention, but I think there's some big, huge topics that are really close that, might be worth.
But their vote counts just as much.
Exactly.
Their vote counts just as much.
Yep.
And they're doing themselves a huge disservice because, through my perspective, you're taught that all the big decisions and all the big things, they all come out of Washington, right? Oh, who's the president right now? Well, really, we
don't have a lake power. I'm going to say this on the record, which is a fact, and I'm verified. We don't have the Lake Powell pipeline moving forward specifically because the president is Joe Biden. If the president was Donald Trump, there would be no
dirt would be moving right now.
Dirt would be moving. We'd have water.
But my point, this is okay. That's a huge infrastructure project, and I that plays into things certainly. But my point being is that if you're trying to do a development to build an apartment complex or a plat of townhomes or something, you're trying to do something that could help those younger people starting off in their families just a couple years after the age that we're talking about. That's not approved by the president. That's not approved by Washington. Nope. There might be sometimes funding that comes in. There still is, right? That's important too. But you could have all the funding in the world, and if the city council or is going to sign off on it, doesn't fit the city master plan, whatever, you could have all the money in the world, and it's just not going to happen. So
yeah, and I think I think everybody's in agreement that mistakes have been made in the past, right? And probably one of the bigger mistakes that we're reaping right now is housing affordability. Yeah. I think that's one that's really on the forefront. And if you are from 18 to 25, that's you got to let your voice be heard, because the city council isn't hearing, somebody say, I can't find a rental, and paying what you want me to pay is stressful, right? It is putting pressure. It's limiting, who is able to come and do the work that needs to be done here.
Yeah. I mean, if you're 19 going to Utah Tech and you don't want to live on campus, it's going to be hard to find a place. Even student housing on campus is expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I first moved to Utah, my first place was $198 a month.
Crazy, man. Well,
that's up in Provo.
But still. But at that time, what year was that?
2012.
2012.
That wasn't that long ago.
It's not that long ago. When you look at home values, and we could take a look at that here in a second, because that's what we're supposed to be talking about. They exploded really in the last 3 years to where it's just not affordable. Our affordability, going back to 2015, we were still affordable. Our affordability index, it's measured on a scale.
Yeah.
So anything over 1, unaffordable. Anything under 1 is more affordable. And we were less than 1 for almost 10 solid years straight in St. George. 10 years straight. And then since 2021, that went out of whack, and we're not anymore. But that one moment is because we didn't do any multifamily development. We did townhomes built for short-term rentals. We built density as resort density, not primary residence density, because that's what the builders, that's where they were making the most money, right? There's only so many builders in town, so many framers to do the work. And they went to the market, they went to the free market, and they said, hey, we're going to make the most money doing this, right? But at the same time, just getting the zoning was very difficult, right? So if they could get the short term, they were just focusing their attention on the short term stuff, and they just completely lost sight. And the city council didn't do anything to really say, hey, we really need multifamily. In my perspective, maybe they did it at some level, but I don't think they did a very good job of encouraging high density, right? Like apartment complexes. And we missed that for a decade. So, as a 18 to 25, if you're here, you gotta speak up and say, hey, we definitely need that more of a running conversation moving forward, and we need to make better decisions on that.
Or if you have kids that will someday be 18 to 25.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's one
and
of the things.
You want to be able to live by you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we hear that all the time. Hey, my kids, they're moving away. They can't afford to
Right.
can't afford to live
It's
here.
a balance between the people not wanting to grow, though, right? It's like, the people,
A lot of people don't want,
they don't want
high density
in their backyard,
Yeah.
right?
What do they call that? The not in my backyard.
Yeah.
Not in my-
it's like the worst. NIMBY is the worst. I hate that word so much. Not in my backyard.
Get off my lawn.
That
I want affordable housing.
I think
over
somebody
on the
was
other side
talking
of
about
town.
changing it to a YIMBY, a yes in my backyard. And I'm like, I don't know if that's going to market well. I don't know if that's going to catch on.
I have an old friend that lives up in Provo, Salt Lake area that really helped open my eyes on some of that stuff. I didn't realize that was a thing.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
Yeah,
early. I mean, I definitely do now, but
I mean, my own parents. She's like, there's just at a certain stage of your life, you don't want to necessarily have townhomes living around you. That's just not. You know what comes from that. My mom lived in a condo and townhome in Huntington Beach, or I guess she was in Irvine for years and years, and she's like, I know what that's like. I just don't want that right now when I'm 60.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in that environment. So there's communities that are like that, and we have a ton of those. We have a ton of those communities.
Yeah. So what's the line then? I mean,
So where is the line?
Yeah.
What is the line? We have a really dynamic geological, area, because it's not just St. George, Ivan, Santa Clara. Like we're all one big melting pot. But
Yeah.
I think there's some strategy moving forward that we really get focused.
Stay tuned to our podcast series.
Yeah, this podcast series,
Yeah.
like that's the idea. Is like how do we bring up some ideas to the forefront and see if we can get movement on. The world's moving so fast. We were just talking about those townhomes, the Dojo townhomes off Black Ridge Cove. How fast they went up. They're talking almost
week.
130. What, 3 a week? Did you say they put 3 up in a week?
Yeah. I mean, that whole street, there was nothing there.
There's probably 100 and I think the total is less than that. It's like 70 units. Maybe it was 100 units.
Yeah, but none of them were even up in December, and now there's
not even up.
Dozens of them that are up.
And now they're almost like finished framing everything, right? So like they're rolling through them super fast. Technology's changed, systems have changed within construction that we can do some pretty cool stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So, anyway, maybe we dive into just the housing market in general, but that's kind of the thought. I think the podcast series interviewing local politicians is going to resonate hopefully with everybody that's listening in to give value outside of just what's the housing market like.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think maybe it'll resonate too with people that are thinking about moving to Southern Utah and what's going on.
yeah.
And,
That's a comment thread that I would love to get into. Like everybody says, stay out of the comments. I'm like, how do we get people engaged in the comments that are coming from out of the area that have opinions about what the mayor of Hurricane says? Or
right, and I think it's important too because
Hurricane.
A lot of people go to YouTube. I think aside from Google, YouTube, like just google.com, people go to YouTube to search for stuff now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if I want to know what's going on, local politics in Southern Utah today, there's not a lot of info going on. Like, hey, who's the city council aside from going to the city website?
Yeah. Like I legitimately just started as I've gone through the process. I just typed in Jimmy Hughes in YouTube to like try to find interviews.
Shout out to Jimmy.
Great episode, by the way. That one's going to be a good one. We talked about a lot of cool stuff on that one. But he didn't have necessarily an opportunity. We don't have like a news station in St. George to like tell people what's going on. Spectrum's gone. Like they haven't posted anything on the website since 2022. Like it's gone.
Yeah.
So
I mean, like Jeff said,
St. George News.
You can get on like the city website and see who's on the city council, who are the mayors.
And there's short little bios, but
like short bios.
Yeah,
that's
but come on, like what do they really? I mean, how are they voting? Right? What's their policy stance? How are they feeling about different cultural topics?
What if I wanted to find out somebody's voting record, like from a city council standpoint?
I think Washington City is the only one that even like makes it super accessible. But I've been going
Shout out
through
to
the
Jordan over there.
Yeah. Hey,
So-
Jordan.
Hey, Jordan has. We still need to get Cress Staley on the calendar. We still don't have him. He's my last mayor to get on the calendar, but we'll get him on.
Yeah.
So I went to the city site. It's actually the state site. You have to go through utah.gov to get there. I should have pulled that up, Mallory, and go through the minutes. You have to search the municipality, and then you got to find St. George. You got to click on that, and then it opens you up into a timeline of running minutes. We'll see if she can pull it up. And you literally have to click on each one. It'll say the date and the minutes, and then you got to scroll through to find out what was voted on. Like you got to literally go through each individual one.
There's no consolidated.
I think you go into
Help me.
So I think I went, go up to government. I actually Googled, say I didn't go this way. Go into Google and just type in St. George City Council agenda. Oh, St. George City, Utah, just to make sure that that's like the added Utah. You could put this at the end. Dude, AI, bro.
I need a Jamie.
Agenda.
Agenda
Let's click on that actually, because that's straight through the city. Because I went through a different way, and this might be better.
Yeah, so like if I wanted to find out, okay, which which city council member or members is most likely to vote yes on, a new development, or something like that.
The only way you go in and look at every single voting minute,
or
and look at see what they voted on in previous times. You don't have there's no full disclosure on. It's very difficult to find out what they are. So if you do an interview, you can kind of get their perspective. But is that actually how they're voting? Right. And a lot of times you can see they voted yes on passing a budget for, X, Y, or Z, but that doesn't fall into the, platform that they're necessarily saying on their website. So the local interaction, right? The ability to talk to the people we go to the store, they just live right around us, making huge impactful decisions on what's going on in the community. I want to make it accessible. So that's what the kind of the vision of the whole podcast is. But we're rocking the vote. MTV News is dead. I heard that too.
MTV's been dead for a while.
MTV News. They finally folded up the news portion of it.
I didn't even know that existed.
Well, they went online, so I think they still had an actual channel.
They
but
stopped playing music a long time ago.
Yeah, MTV just the music videos itself. Vivo, I think, killed it.
Did they send me a notice of closure to my AOL email or?
Not yet. I don't think so. And then maybe it's coming in the mail on a disc. Those send you a disc.
You only got MTV News on Internet Explorer.
MTV News. I think Ridiculousness killed music on MTV, didn't it?
Oh yeah, that might have.
Excellent show, by the way.
Rob
Dyrdek. Genius.
Army of Robs. Rob Dyrdek, shout out.
Yeah, genius.
He is a genius. Yeah. Well, so you could go on and get the agenda minutes right there on the city site. So you don't have to go through the state, but there is a state portal as well. But that doesn't even look like you can. I guess you could maybe search. Is that a search function?
By date and title?
Yeah, go January. Yeah, see, you'd have to know the exact date.
Scroll back up to the top, Mallory. I think there was a search function right up at the top. Yeah.
Oh, search month, year, type. Oh yeah.
Do you want me to search?
No, you don't have to do. You don't have to do that.
I spend most of my life in Microsoft Excel, and even this looks boring to me.
Oh yeah, super boring. Let's jump into the housing market data. So, real quick, this is on our website, wealth435.com. So we got a general. Let's just look at the general numbers for the month of April. Average list price, $841,000 in the county. So this is Washington County data, residential only. So it's not St. George City, it's not Ivins, it's specifically the county and residential properties, townhomes, condos, single family homes. Average list price $841,000. At the average sold price, it says sale price $621,000, almost $200,000 different, or over $200,000 difference. Crazy. So listing way higher than what they're actually selling for. Median is what I look at the most. $655,000. $517,000 is actually what they're getting. So another $150,000 off. We're listing it way higher than they're actually going for.
Yeah. So I wonder if sellers are still kind of clinging to the crazy market. For sure. Back in 2021, where they think, hey, let's just list it. Let's just list it and see what happens.
Either that, or there's voices in their ear saying, well, if you're going to sell it, you could sell it for more. I'm trying to run a really roundabout way. Say maybe there's agents encouraging people. To
maybe
a little higher than maybe they ought to, because it helps them, get the deal or whatever.
What I find is a lot of times agents just don't know. They just don't know. So they go off of kind of their gut. They do one CMA at a time, and then the sellers are always the one. They're going to do their research, which they should. Right, they're going to look at Zillow. They're going to look at tax value. They're going to hear it from their neighbor.
But the problem is,
they'll do some research.
In Utah, you have the same problem on the way up, right? That we had on the way up, which was the home would get listed and then it was kind of undervalued. And so there'd just be this bidding war where the market would bring it up to value. But now we're having the same problem on the way down, which is where the sales price in Utah isn't disclosed after. And so it's not as easy for, like, if I'm going to go on Zillow as just,
if you don't have access
regular
to the
guy,
data,
if I'm just a regular guy trying to see what my house is worth, all I see is all the other houses around me, how much are they listed for, not how much they're actually truly selling for.
Right.
And so, all of a sudden it can look really easily when I'm trying to even do my own research. And I feel like, my home's worth a certain dollar amount based on what I'm seeing, but I'm not seeing the real data set of what stuff's truly selling for.
Yeah. Well, and like property is such an important factor, but just kind of looking macro, the market as a whole, though, comparing the 2 years, we're down 13% in sold value in the month of April. So the homes that sold in April last year, sold in April this year, prices are down as a whole market, almost 14%.
Look at the days on market. You were getting there, but that plays into the sales price too.
So
it's crazy.
72. We went from a median. I think the average is the best one to look at on that one.
Probably.
So the average cumulative days on market. So it's the total amount of time on the market, right, active and ready to go. 72 days versus 16 days, which is a rolling number too. Like this data, it's hard to calculate average cumulative days on market. You just pulling from the data sets. Normally looking at it rolling is better, but year to date is 71 and 27. So year to date over the last, so we got 4 months of data. Still
a huge gap.
And it feels so much longer, but 71 days is kind of like, that's about as long as.
It's a pretty healthy market.
That's a pretty healthy market. Average days on market in 2015 were probably around 70 to 80 days on market too, maybe even 90. So we're back to a normal market. So my thought is this: sellers aren't being patient enough, and they're dropping their prices before the market is actually telling them what the real value is. Because let's look at our listing that was off Bluff. I don't know if we want to necessarily call out client names, but on that particular one, we were on the market for a while. The first offer we got was basically what we sold it for, right? Or did we end up getting more?
A little bit more.
So yeah.
And I mean, the seller was patient.
And how long we've been on the market for?
About 100 days.
100 days?
About 100 days, yeah.
So he's patient and got his price.
Yeah. However, here's the flip side. I showed a home the other day to a client that had been on the market for about 16 days, and it had already been dropped 10 grand. 16 days.
It's not enough time.
Not even close. So.
And then it also depends on like what's the overall price of that home, right? Because if you do one price for, let's say, 16 grand, but it's $1 million property, it doesn't
move the needle at all.
It's not moving
and also it's tough, on the buyer side, you don't know the seller's situation or timeline or whatever. And so,
price, time, and terms. Yeah. Those are your three negotiating factors when it comes to real estate and buying and selling. So that's going to dictate price. So, the best part about real estate, I think, is that it's all very clear how to price homes. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but patience typically wins. But you're going to get the most money 99 times out of 100 in the first 30 days, in my opinion. Like great marketing, hit the market, priced correctly. Because if you get multiple offers even right now, you're still getting the very most money, no matter what. If you have two people that are coming to the table at the exact same time and they bid up against each other, you're going to get the highest market value. That's my perspective. And it plays out time and time again, because then you could wait 100 days like our other client, get what he was waiting for, but what was the cost of the 100 days versus potentially we could have gotten that price just the first couple of weeks in, because I think we got our first offer on like day 14 or something like that, right?
Yeah, might have even been a little bit sooner.
So, the market is the market. We move slow. 6-month rolls is really what we're looking at. So be patient. If you're a seller out there, I think be patient, but make sure you're priced. You got to be getting some showings. You can't just be sitting there and nobody's looking at it at all, because you're way off on price at that point.
Yeah. And I would add too, make sure you're working with an agent that's going to be honest with you, even if it's not what you want to hear, at least,
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I was going to say was just the incentive to come in low to get it sold. There's not as many real estate agents out there, I think, that are like, I'm just going to price it low just to sell it fast, because if you price it too low, market will bring it back up. So even if an agent makes that
Yeah,
mistake,
there's that house off, off of Dixie Downs that did that.
well, and when the market was crazy, when we were selling things in 7 days, right? When the market was crazy, you actually could price it too low because you end up with, 10 offers. And at some point you got to cut it off, right? And out of those 10, you didn't actually get the highest buyer because it was 7 days in. You just didn't get to the full market, let people, download all the information. It's just a frenzy. So some people would bid it up 20, 30 grand, but what if they started 15 grand too low to start with?
Yeah.
They might have missed it because when you start saying, I'm going to write out an offer for $30,000 over asking price, as a buyer, you have this thing in your stomach. You're like, what am I doing? That seems crazy.
It's crazy.
But it was possible that we were undervaluing the house to start with. But that was most times it's not.
I did that a couple times with clients, and the appraisal came in higher than the purchase price
Yeah.
during all that craziness.
Right. And appraisals are, those are tough too. There's a whole
All I'm
nother-
saying is I felt confident that we weren't actually buying at 30,000 over what the market really would bear on it.
Yeah. Well, I think my favorite thing, Mal, if we could keep scrolling through, because this is just kind of a general summary of data. This is supply and demand. So overall macro market last month in April, go all the way down to supplies at the top. Oh, I'm sorry. Just make supply at the very, very tippy top. So in April, the MLS changed over to this this graph, trends graph, and I did wrong information to collect the data. So it looked like we were at a 20-year high in supply. And I was like, there's no way that's right. But I kept running the data and it kept showing up that was the most homes that were active. Come to find out, there was a couple other things I needed to do. Even though we're not at a 20-year high with supply, we are in a pretty big high over the last 3+ years. Right. We're right back into the market we were at back in 2019. So you can kind of clearly see it from this timeline. COVID is this ripple, right? You can see the big drop down, going back up, late 21 because interest rates, they were worried about interest rates. So you get this, nervousness in the market. Then the rates stayed down. Buyers came to the market, sellers stopped selling, and prices boomed. And now, April of 22, the market has gone very cold. You can see it going apart. Now we're coming back together. So it looks like we're in kind of a normal up and down of a market. The best part about it, I think we only pulled back 15% before I think we're about to stabilize for a little while. I think we're probably going to be stable through spring next year, at least in our market, which will make upward pressure on pricing. So if you keep going down, this is the best part right here. This is exactly, if I'm a seller, what am I expecting? If I'm a buyer, what am I expecting? Starting with price, no matter how you look at it, the first filter a buyer makes is what am I going to pay for this, right? No matter what the price point is, that's the first filter. Then they say, I want a location and I want 4 beds and I want, a garage and all that stuff. So if we just look at that first filter, we're in a seller's market all the way to 800,000, if not all the way up to 1 million, which right there at 800 to or 900 to 1 million, we're just getting about to 6 months of absorption. So remember I said earlier, where our markets are 6 months in rolls. So that's when you're like, hey, there's more inventory than the market's willing to bear. And we crest over that over 1 million, and we're in a buyer's market up top.
Again, 6 months is a pretty healthy seller's market still.
Yeah, it's a healthy seller's market. Absolutely. And this is a rolling 3-month calculation. So,
but a lot of sellers aren't used to that, right?
Yeah.
Because the last couple of years, a lot of sellers are like, my home's not sold. It's been 32 days. What are we going to do?
Exactly.
So
that's why let's look at it 90 days. So we have these 90-day windows that we can look at. It's actually a FHA and a Fannie Mae calculation that our MLS does specifically for understanding absorption rate. So I think it's one of the functions that not a lot of agents know within Flex how to do. But this is really good. If I'm going to list a house in a $100,000 window, you got to remember buyers, price points can be really narrow, but the ups and downs, especially once you get over 700,000, their windows are about 100,000 at a time. They're going to look down and up probably 100 grand. So we're upward pressure on pricing, which is great news for sellers. If you price it right, it's going to move. And then the buyer's market starts at about 1 million. And we had a lot of inventory hit that was around 1 million all at once. But it seems like that inventory is almost finished, right? There's not a whole lot of new building I've seen lately. Have you looked at the permits? Did you look at the permits from that market report? I wanted to have the construction up, but I didn't prep for it. How are we doing on permits? Do you remember?
Let me pull it up.
Okay.
I think I've got the data right here.
He might have it, and we'll look at it, which isn't a huge deal because permits are a leading indicator of supply in 12 months about, because it's probably going to be at least 12 before that dirt and the permit turns into an actual house. So that's kind of another leading indicator that we look at. And then keep scrolling. There's a little bit of inflation number here. I thought this was interesting. Branden, maybe you can look at this and what jumps out to you? So we got the price index, 12-month percent change.
Fuel and oil, gas, all types down a lot. That might reverse.
So that's
interest
deflation.
Yeah, interest rates higher. Rent growth is interesting. 8.8% on rent growth.
So real rent growth, and then you have rent growth.
Owners, yeah, right, because you have the owner's equivalent of rent, which is what they're really paying attention to mostly.
And that's 2.8. Home payment jumped 40%, interest rates jumped 56%, but that's the lever they're pulling, right?
No, yeah. So what's interesting is you're saying real rent growth, right? So real rent growth is, that's what you're truly paying on a rental, 2.8%. And then you have owner's equivalent of rent, which is your home payment, or what would you rent that home for, right? And that's up at 8%.
So that's outpacing what actually a renter is.
That's a big disconnect, yeah.
Yeah.
So does that mean that there's downward pressure on home prices, or there's upward pressure to remain on rent prices? It's a disconnect there.
And then it's also a local, it's super hyper local, right? Because I think this is national.
That's totally national.
I have a couple numbers. So year to date, residential permits is 832.
Okay.
Week 19, so May 4th to May 10th, there were 67 single family home permits pulled.
67. Okay.
I'd say that's a pretty decent amount in a week.
Yeah, that's cranking up the numbers a little bit. Yep. So it's coming back. This is macro inflation numbers, right? So if you're curious about what's going on here, this is a good number to look at. I like this next slide the best, I think. Now.
If I were to comment on inflation as a whole, what you have now after the last CPI print is you have a Fed funds rate higher than the inflation rate finally, which is significant. But you are coming into a couple things, right? The liquidity in the market overall is coming dry. And, but inflation's just hitting into that sticky spot. I think it's going to be a lot harder, just by own, arrogant opinion here, that inflation could stick pretty hard, at its current levels, right?
Yeah.
To get back down to 2 is going to take, I think, a bit more time and work.
It's probably just a whole nother selling season, right? We got to get through Christmas again one more time, right? Before we can shake it off, I guess.
Well, ultimately at this point, the only thing that's going to get down lower is unemployment rate, because you have real you have real wage growth that's driving the inflation numbers at this point, right? So the unemployment would really have to rise, but the economy's holding strong. So then what ends up happening, I'm not 100% sure, but the market certainly seems to bake in the idea that interest rates are going to drop by the end of the year in a pretty decent way. At least the Fed funds rate, right? Obviously, there's a disconnect between that, right? The Fed doesn't affect mortgage rates. However, right?
It does. I think your mortgage interest rate's probably more closely tied to the bond market than anything else.
Well, yeah, because they get securitized and sold on the secondary market and MBSs. And oftentimes people look at like the 10-year as somewhat of a measure to try to look at what mortgage rates will be doing instead of a 30-year.
They change daily too, and there's so many other factors that go into it. The interest rates are hard to project out.
I guess what I'm getting at is, if the inflation, does or doesn't ease up one way or the other, but they drop rates. The upward pricing that is going to happen on homes is significant. And so if you have the same thing that happened in 21, but you just dropped the interest rates to, mortgage rates got to 4.
Yeah.
you know, like think what that's going to do to the home prices. I mean,
dude, it would just ignite.
but
this,
it does
millennial
nothing. But it does
pocketbook.
nothing for the affordability problem, right? It's going to make it actually. So even though rates would come down, it would make it more difficult to get.
That's why from my perspective, we're probably going to hold a steady interest rate. It's right on this cusp of. I think they found the middle. Because over 7, it was like you're dumping the housing market into the toilet, and they haven't gotten close. They went to 7 for like 1 week, if that, back in January, and it was like, we don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. You know, every application dried up. They came back down, and they seem to have like kind of stabilized around the 6s. It's like high 6s, and then I could see, you know, high 5s, maybe in Q4. Because they're trying to get where people normally are not buying, they want to encourage buying. And when they are buying, they want to discourage buying because you're trying to, it's like feathering the pedal, so to speak. And the interest rates are really the only lever that they can have to do it. So if I'm a buyer, you're in the spring market, we have upward pressure on pricing right now. If it's only a 1% window that we'd be looking at right now, you just buy now, in my mind.
Well, yeah, oftentimes that's kind of a somewhat rule of thumb, right? If the interest rate is going to drop by more than 1%, it can be worth it to do a refinance, right? So you don't want to refinance.
I think you kind of have to be over 1% or because the costs, when you put it on an amortization schedule, it doesn't really make sense, right?
Yeah, it oftentimes is a lot more expensive to do a refinance than people calculate, and not all lenders necessarily disclose that, but it can be. So you want to make sure that you're getting a big enough discount on the rate to justify that. But if you got to live somewhere, you got to live somewhere, right? I mean,
any second you're paying another landlord, you're going to pay, in your life, you're going to pay a landlord one way or another.
Well,
you're going to be it or somebody else.
Sometimes it might depend on the situation too.
For sure. I mean, that's my general rule of thumb, right? If you're going to be somewhere for 5 to 7 years at least, you're pretty stable. You have a stable income or stable job, right? Life's pretty stable for you. It's generally speaking a pretty decent time to buy a house.
It's funny because Colton Curtis, shout out to one of my clients, Colton, who's now a real estate agent up north, and he was 19 and there was no such thing as stability. And he's like, I heard the thing to do is just never rent, just go buy something. And I want to get a townhome. He lived in his van and immediately started renting it out and cash flowed from day one. And now he's got like $250,000 in equity in it. He's, 23 and he was living in his van. He's just kept living in his van and snowboarding and working like normal, but he was a homeowner doing nothing but having tenants pay him money. It was just brilliant, right? He just saw the idea right out of the gate.
I just met him randomly a couple of weeks ago.
Colton, I know.
While I was up in Salt Lake. Yeah.
He always falls into my world one way or another, man. Him and I are connected.
Yeah, we had some breakfast and sharp guy.
Yeah, he's a good dude. But yeah, so I think if I'm listening to this, don't wait. If you're in the next 12 months, just go right now. If you're thinking about it, you can put the pieces into play to buy something right now. I think you should. There's going to be some big bonuses for first-time home buyers in July because there's a big grant that's going to go like wildfire. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in that grant and how to get some money directly from the government into your pocket for a brand new construction, we even have condos that we know of that will be available to purchase here in St. George. Mm-hmm. If you're a first-time home buyer, younger family, college student, you name it, you're 18, we want to get you one of those condos to start this.
If it's the right situation.
There's
some caveats to it. So just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should.
Right.
But if it fits your situation and your job.
Come talk to us about it. We want to help you through it. Yeah. I think that's a big driver. Mm-hmm. This affordability in 1989, a car would have cost you $15,000. In 2023, we're at $50,000. I'm rounding up. Adjusted for inflation and then the real percent change with that inflation, 30% more to own a car today than it was back in 89. 48% more expensive for gas, 62% more expensive to purchase a home, but the mortgage, believe it or not, is 6% less. So you have a cheaper adjusted for inflation mortgage right now than you did in 1989.
That's what kills me about all this. So you have
when I was younger, I bought a house for $15,000.
No, you see,
interest.
No, you see.
I'm not making fun of anybody in particular, by the way.
Me neither here. But on the flip side of that coin, you see, a different demographic that says something like, you used to be able to sell shoes at the department store and support like a family of four and go on vacation, buy a house and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's like, and they say like, the house was $94,000 and the mortgage payment was only $825. They totally forget to inflation adjust that. So once you inflation adjust it, like $231,000 isn't, the home is a lot more expensive, but because interest rates are so much lower, it's actually somewhat cheaper to buy a house today. But the reason that it feels more expensive isn't because of the housing market always, it's because of the ancillaries around it, right? Look how much more money people are paying for vehicles, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
For food. You go out to eat.
It has been, a lot of times in the last 2 years that I've sat with families that they have car payments in their family that are significantly more expensive than my mortgage.
Yeah.
So they're cars, you're paying for fuel. It's a huge expense.
Yep.
If fuel's up, utilities are up too, right? On housing.
And overall though, like looking at that's on a average purchase price of 375. Our median was over 680, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, for sure.
Putting it in perspective into St. George too, this chart is almost laughable because it's not even helpful as I think about it. Because I'm like, oh shoot, this doesn't. If you're living in St. George, this isn't as helpful. But I think macro, it's still always something.
Here's
the
macro about. Point I'm trying to get at is that housing is not in our area. It can be very difficult, but you have some huge costs and cost inflation in some of the other areas that money's being spent. So. If you're mindful, really truly mindful of where money's going and what that lifestyle looks like, if owning a home and housing is a priority for you, it's not so far out of whack that just give up and all hope is lost. Right?
It's stay in the game.
You can stay in the game on this, right?
We can watch it. It's slow. A lot of our clients, it's like 12 months before they actually pull the trigger and get something, right? As far as buyers go, a lot of people take their time doing that. I think that's the normal.
Well, and it's going to be like 3 years before they call you back and thank you too.
If they ever do. No, it's like, I'm going to talk to a real estate agent 7 days before I decide to buy a house, right? Like that should not be the strategy. Strategy is like, hey, go find a real estate agent you like, connect with them, understand the market, help them, let them educate you on the market so you can follow along. And then when the moment's right, then you go back to them and you say, hey, because that's really the commission. I think driving this point home, and it's hard for me to think about all the time too, is the commission that you pay. It shouldn't be for the services that were provided in the 30-day time frame between contract to close. Yeah. That's not what the services are for in real estate, because real estate is a dynamic industry that is always changing. It's across the nation, 70% of the net worth of humans is residing in their primary residence. Their house, their real estate is their largest asset. And so having a real estate agent that does it for $500 or, isn't really paying attention to the market, but just wants to be able to get you from contract to close, you just got the wrong guy.
There's the old story about the engine mechanic that, someone needed an engine mechanic. Guy walks up to the engine, looks around it for a couple minutes, puts his ear up to the engine, listens to it for a minute, walks to the back of the engine, taps on it with a hammer, and engine fires up, runs perfect. And the engine mechanic says, "Hey, you owe me $2,500 or whatever the price is." And the owner says, "What? All you did was tap on the engine with the hammer." He's like, "You're not paying me because I just tapped on the engine with a hammer. You're paying me because I knew where to tap." So, from a real estate agent perspective, goes back to what you were saying. It's all the work and research that goes into it.
You just said magic stuff though. We're not magical. Tapped on the car and it started right up.
Run that one by your dad.
Yeah, my dad would be like, "That's never happened for me. I had to pull the whole thing back apart again."
Yeah, right.
He told me a story. He put in a transmission because he swapped out an engine and pulled out the transmission. Says he got it all back together. He missed one lever because my dad tells like the longest stories ever, and I have ADHD, so half the story I'm like, yeah. And like, wait, what was he talking about again?
Yeah, he had to pull the whole thing back out.
He had to start all over again and pull it out all over again. But that's how the McFarland gentlemen do it. Let's keep rolling, Mallory. Let's go down. This one's interesting. Number of listings. So this is supply. We just have that's a downward trajectory on supply of homes. Number of homes sold is down 25%. Oh, this is sold. I'm sorry. Sold listings. So this is actually a demand.
So look at April of 22 compared to April of 23.
Right. So the number, and this is just pure number of homes, rooftops that were sold, right? Residential rooftops sold over the course of the last 2 years were down 25% year to date. When demand goes lower and supply goes lower, you have an equal pressure on pricing. But when supply goes up and demand goes down, that's when you have downward pressure on pricing. Right now we have equal to upward pressure on pricing. We know it specifically because of this, and we should only expect this to go up from here. But we'll see. We'll see. Keep scrolling. The average 30-year rate. So that was just a snapshot, and Mortgage News Daily is an aggregate of a bunch of different rates because it is a moving target depending on the qualifications and things like that. So you can kind of see it in the lighter colors. The Freddie Mac number is less than 6.5. But this is a 3 months. So it's on a regular basis. These things are changing. That's 6 and 7%. We're jumping right there in that 1% range. So kind of what we were talking about earlier. Keep scrolling. If you go to the website, what do you want to say?
One of just talking about interest rates, one of the things to really watch for is as the spread between the 30-year fixed rate and the 10-year bond gets too far. If there starts being more than a 3% spread on that, you will likely see a mean reversion. It can't be spread that far. So if you are looking at, houses and rates and stuff, and that's looking a little out of whack, you might not be too anxious or too over eager on something that you're not for sure on. But if you see that the closer the 30-year fixed rate gets to the 10-year treasury, you might be able to lock in a really nice interest rate for a long-term on your, long-term purchase on a home.
So if you're watching that as those things come together. So if you got a long time frame, like 12 months, and you're kind of watching it, is that what you mean?
Yeah, if you're kind of watching it and you're like, well, I kind of like this house, and there's not a big spread between those, it might be just a nice
Where
opportunity.
do you go if
don't make your final don't make your final buying decision based on that.
Yeah,
right?
but let's say there's some stat nerds out there that are just like you. Where would they go to look at it?
You can pull that right on Mortgage News Daily. Mortgage News Daily.
Yeah. Mortgage News Daily. That's where I go for all of it. That's like my go-to.
Yeah, they have the 10-year.
They do have that. That's right.
Yeah, they got the 10-year treasury. All I'm saying is so if it's the mortgage rate is 6 and the 10-year bond is 2.75, too much spread, right? But if the mortgage rate is 6 and the 10 years 4.5, 5, all of a sudden that'd be probably a nice little time potentially.
Yeah, because inflation's going up,
with the current craziness in the rates. Yeah,
yeah.
Again,
real estate hedges,
a final buying decision based on that.
But real estate hedges inflation at a certain level.
Well, so if you look and you're just saying how do I be the guy that's not locking in 7.25 on this chart when obviously hey, some people are locking in closer to 6. Right. Yeah. There is some indicators that you can look at out there to help you understand a little bit where rates are going. And I don't know.
I hear you.
If somebody does, and they don't want to get too, if somebody doesn't want to get too deep in the weeds, I don't know. Give me a call. I love just looking at this stuff. So
yeah, you could geek out about that all day long.
Yeah.
If you keep scrolling, it's developments and what's happening right now. Thanks to McCrae Hepler. Shout out to McCrae and Eagle Gate for putting this list together. So he emails this to me, and I just drop it right back on the website. Just tells you all the different stuff that's opening. It's focused mainly around small businesses and eateries, things like that. So you want to stay in the know. Follow McCrae Hepler for sure. What else should we talk about, guys? In the real estate market, if I'm a buyer, we should be serious about buying right now. I don't think there's any reason why to wait. If I'm a seller, be patient. Make sure you're pricing it right at the beginning. It should sell in the first 30 days. If it's not selling in the first 30 days, make some price you have to make some price change because that's the only way you get a new demand group through. But you don't have to make huge jumps. We're talking 1% at the most at a time, probably. I think you could make bigger jumps if you're eager to really move it. But I think it's dangerous because you kind of pull some negotiating power out of the way if you're showing your cards too early.
Yeah, I think a price drop, from a buyer's perspective, you see a huge price drop and it's like, well, what's wrong with the house?
Well, but like Weaver, he's tested that out a couple of times and he's definitely hit the market where he's made he goes high first for a couple, it was like a couple of weeks, I think maybe 20 days. And then I've seen him do like $75,000 drops on $400,000 properties.
And sell it for $50,000 more than what the drop was.
And then sell it for $50,000 more. Yeah. So it seems like that strategy has worked, but most of them have been like kind of distress sales, like sellers like, hey, I really need this to move quickly.
Yeah, or a smaller home in a in an area that might not be as desirable
Yeah,
as other.
a fixer-upper or something that's a little bit off normal. However, I think the dynamics of the market are probably going to ring true, whether it's a fixer-upper, somebody that's a little bit more less worried about the biggest price, right? But I think if you make a big drop out of the gate, if you're already comfortable with that, you might drive some attention to it right out of the gate too. Yeah. But be patient. Anything else, guys?
Crack Shack.
Crack Shack.
Is that on there?
Opens May 24th.
Oh,
May 24th.
The only reason I know is because I've been there twice.
Twice it has been open.
I drove up one time. I was like, gosh, dang it.
I know. Express Chicken too on Sunset.
Oh yeah,
just open. Yeah.
Hey, there's a chicken place going in where the old Arby's was over by the mall, isn't there?
That's what I heard. Is it a chicken place?
Yeah, it's a chicken place.
Can never have too much
Dirty
chicken.
Birds or something.
I saw a comment on Facebook that says we don't need any more chicken spots here, and it's like you can never have too much chicken. What are these people thinking?
As long as it's not a Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A?
Shots fired.
Shots fired.
I like Chick-fil-A.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if
Shout out to Dem McDonald if he's
Chick-fil-A,
watching.
I get Chick-fil-A sometimes if I'm sitting in my office and I'm like really just feeling. I'm like, yeah, I think some Wonder Bread with no flavor and mild seasoning, maybe peanut butter would be it. And I'm like, yeah, I'll run across the street to Chick-fil-A.
More shots fired. I can't disagree. I mean, you can get.
I disagree. Chick-fil-A is delicious.
I want fries that taste like laundry.
You gotta eat the fry. You gotta eat the fries in about 15 seconds of receiving them, or they'll get cold. And it's
That is true. That's true.
Viva Chicken, Super Chicks.
Oh,
delicious,
Viva Chicken
So
is
good.
awesome, man. Viva Chicken is. I ran into somebody down in Scottsdale that I was talking, and I always invite people. I love when people come by, come through town. I grab some food with them on their way through or whatever, right? So I always so I'm down at this conference. I'm telling people they're like, oh, St. George, Utah, Utah's cool. What's it like, or whatever? And I was like, come on out. There's so much to do if you like hiking. I live right outside Zion National Park. It's beautiful, especially if you live, somewhere cold in the winter. Come through town in the winter. And this guy goes, every time we drive through, we always stop in St. George. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to take you out. I'll take you out to a local spot for lunch or something. He's like, no, we only go to Viva Chicken when we come through town. Like,
my clients coming from Michigan.
It's good.
They were told because they had a Viva Chicken out there, or somebody else. It was like a friend of theirs was like, they have a Viva Chicken there. You got to go there, and it didn't disappoint.
Oh yeah,
it didn't disappoint. It is delicious.
It was the one restaurant that we ate at when we came to visit St. George in 2015.
Peruvian, right? It's Peruvian chicken?
Yeah, Peruvian chicken. It was the one restaurant my wife and I ate at. We came here for our first anniversary, came down here. We ate at Viva Chicken, and that's what we always said and remembered about St. George was like, oh, Viva Chicken, that place down in St. George was so good that we ate at. And then when we had the opportunity, that was like one of the things we're like, let's move to St. George to hit that chicken place.
Move to St. George for the chicken place. All right, guys. Well, I don't. No one's watching anymore. I don't think. I think everybody's left the room.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know.
I'm about to leave the room. Got stuff to do.
What else are you doing?
I got some research to do. I got to do some rebalancing, reallocation. I'm working on the lease for that new office.
Oh
space.
yeah.
Got that going on. Yeah, stuff's moving and shaking.
Can't wait to get into another office. I hate moving offices, dude. It's my least favorite thing.
Ironically, maybe back to the same one. We'll see.
I know. We're back where it all began.
Seems the tables have turned.
Ah, yes. Maybe not. I'll just work from my truck like I normally do. It is my favorite office, the truck.
It's a nice truck.
Let's sign out, guys. Over and out. We're Rob, Jeff, and Branden.
Bye.
The 4-3. Bye. Is that our sign off?
Why not?